This episode was recorded prior to the tragic loss of Missouri State football player Todric McGee. Our thoughts are with his family, the Missouri State community, football players, and coaches.
Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be heading over to Conference USA and taking a look at newcomer to FBS football, the Missouri State Bears, who finished 8-4 last season. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with their spring game on April 5th. We have a special guest joining us today. He works for the Springfield News-Leader. They are the best source of news in Springfield, Missouri, and the Ozarks. Many say he is the best-looking sports reporter there. He is Wyatt Wheeler. Wyatt can be found at Wyatt Wheeler _NL on X. Welcome to the show, Wyatt.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm the only one saying that. I'm the only sports reporter at this paper. So people have told me they think I'm full of myself when they see that, and then they realize I'm the only one. They're like, oh, I get
it. Well, for those who are just turning into the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been covering Missouri State football?
Yeah, a long time. I've seen a lot of bad days, and I've seen things get kind of get built up. So it's about I've been probably watching Missouri State football, covering it for 8 years now, probably going on my 9th. It's a lot of really bad in the beginning, and it's just gotten a little bit better with some of the change, with some coaching changes and everything. And now it's growing into this team that's going to be playing FBS for the first time. So it's been pretty cool to watch this. But no, been here for a while, living here in the Ozarks, watching some better football, some bad basketball most of my career, and then some pretty good baseball at the same time. So it's been a lot of fun.
For those not familiar with the Bears' offensive style, how would you describe it?
Yeah, of course, it's they're going to run a professional offense. It's a pro offense. Nick Petrino, the son of Bobby Petrino, is the offensive coordinator. Bobby was the head coach here for 3 years. And now it's his son-in-law is the head coach. Another son-in-law is a defensive coordinator. And then his son's the offensive coordinator. So a lot of this is just fingerprints of Bobby Petrino from his first years here. He was hired in January 2020. Coached 3 seasons, led the Bears to 2 playoff appearances, both of them the first since 1990, to give you an idea of how long this place has been without good football. And, right now they're able to throw the ball a lot. They have a quarterback that should get some NFL looks after this season. One of the best quarterbacks, if not the best pro-style quarterback at the FCS level last year. Should anticipate him being a really good group of 5 quarterback, assuming that the offensive line can keep him upright and everything. And some of the weapons that he has can grow into being reliable guys after some turnover at those spots. But a lot's going to go through Jacob Clark this year. They've had some really good quarterbacks over the last few years. Really, the last 2 starting quarterbacks they've had, you're going to argue and put up there with top 3 in school history. So the offense is explosive. They're going to throw the ball a lot.
Well, let's keep on talking about Jacob Clark. He excelled in the offense, throwing for 3,621 yards and 26 touchdowns while adding 236 yards and another touchdown on the ground. He averaged 301 passing yards per game. How did he look in the spring?
Yeah, we didn't get too much to look at in the spring. I got just combining that with all the basketball they cover in the area. Got 2 good looks at him in scrimmages, and one of them was just a downpour. So it was really bad weather, really impacting that game to where I didn't really get to best assess him there. But, and then when you just kind of he's been him. He's been able to what we've been used to seeing from him. Taller guy that's going to throw the ball down the field, going to climb up in the pocket, be in there as long as possible. And he's accurate with a good arm. So he looks healthy. He looks like himself. He's setting all the school passing records last year for single season. I'm going to challenge some career ones coming up this year. But that was the most important thing to keep going into this year. That's one of the best in school history, like I've said, and in this NIL world and transfer portal and everything, he would have been a pretty good one for a lot of teams to grab and try to come get. But Missouri State's done a good job keep putting a package together, keeping them in Springfield. And that's just something else, something they don't have to worry about when they're going into a new level of football, trying to build up and be competitive.
So Brock Bagazi graduated. They brought in Drew Viato from Eastern Michigan, and they have a freshman coming in, Deuce Bailey. Would you assume Viato can hold on to that number 2 job all season long?
Yeah, that's a good question. Viato comes in, and there's a lot of offense to learn, and he's got that head start on Deuce Bailey, having been here for a spring. Deuce was a really good basketball player at his high school. Didn't end up early enrolling. So Viato's a guy that you're watching. He's got a similar build to Jacob Clark. He's has a similar background. Both were at Minnesota for a second early in their careers. So there's similarities there. And kind of watching him throughout the spring, he did like to throw the home run ball a little bit, just push the ball down the field. Which we'll see. It's turned into some interceptions. We'll see how he grows within that. But they also had a couple guys that were ahead of him on the depth chart throughout the spring as he learned the offense. Deuce is going to have to come in here in the next couple of months, and do the same. Try to build that up. So I assume Drew will be quarterback 2 for this year. And then, your Deuce is Deuce is one of the better quarterback prospects the school's ever landed, to the point where, next year after a redshirt season, maybe he's challenging for that job a little more. And then you never know what happens with the transfer portal when maybe they try to go get somebody with a little more experience than these guys, whether it's an FCS guy, whether it's a guy that ended up getting benched or not going to be a starter anymore at the power levels or group of 5 levels. That's just going to move down a little bit. So that's going to be something that we're watching all year. When Missouri State's in another year where there's no postseason eligibility, and you're just kind of watching them build for the next season, who's going to be that quarterback once they are bowl eligible, trying to get that off to the right spot.
Do you think they would even hold back, even if Deuce was ready let's say next season, he's ready to go as a starter? Do you think they hold him back just because they're not eligible for for a bowl, or do you think they would just throw them out there anyways and lose an eligibility?
Well, I mean, this upcoming year was the only year that they'll be ineligible for the bowl because they were ineligible for the FCS playoffs this past year. So yeah, I would assume that's going to be the big question. You could see them trying to let Drew play 4 fewer games, trying to get Deuce in 4 fewer games. So that's going to be something that we're watching all year.
We'll get to the running game in just a second, but given the turnover in that room, do you expect them to use Clark more in the running game than perhaps we saw last year, or do you think his usage will be similar?
I think it's going to be similar. I think they're going to bubble wrap him and should try to do everything they can to make sure he's healthy. He went down with a shoulder injury year before this past one that sat him out for the rest of the year. You know, the quarterback that they had behind him came in and was highly productive as well. So this offense can produce numbers out of its quarterback if they play within it that we've seen the last couple of years. But they're not gonna turn Jacob loose. He'll take off when he needs to. He's gotten a lot better at sliding, a lot better at running out of bounds or throwing the ball away when he can. But we're gonna see. It's gonna be interesting to see how this offensive line is gonna hold up as it goes up against better defensive lines, deeper defensive lines, and they played some great defensive lines in the Missouri Valley Football Conference when you're considering North Dakota State, South Dakota State, some of those teams that they saw every week. But now you're going to see some teams like that every single week, where the worst teams are better than some of the good teams you played at the lower levels. So they're gonna try to keep the hits to a minimum for Jacob.
So moving over to that running game, this room lost Jacardia Wright to graduation and Jaden Becks to the portal, which means 1,313 yards of 1,404 yards, or approximately 93.5% of the running backs' 2024 rushing production is gone. Should also note that those two accounted for all of the running backs' rushing touchdowns in 2024 with 21 touchdowns. This room does return Reggie Branch, Iverson Young, Ramon Green Jr. They bring in Shamari Lawrence from Florida International. And it also sounds like true freshman King Davis has been showing out in the spring. What were your takeaways in the spring from this room?
Yeah, I'm optimistic about it. Jaden Becks transferred to North Texas. You would have circled him, been like premier running back, really good. First 2 seasons really broke out last year. Young back, fast. Doesn't surprise me that he moved on to, North Texas. And now you look at North Texas a little bit as a peer, but they're more established. And these schools are going to have a lot more money to spend than Missouri State's going to, at least right now. But those are big losses. I'm optimistic about Shamari Lawrence from Florida International. It seems to be running back 1. Just from what I saw a little bit, he throughout the spring didn't really dance around a lot. Was good at hitting the holes. I thought that's something that Missouri State did a little. That Jacardia Wright, big back that with great speed. Looks like the running back you would want. I thought he did a little too much running into the back of his linemen, stopping his feet, trying to make a little too much in the backfield. So I think Lawrence is going to be – I think Lawrence is a good replacement, going to be able to fill those shoes. And, I like King Davis. Davis is probably going to be a little bit in that Jaden Becks role where he's catching the ball out of the backfield, being that faster runner. Nick Petrino usually dials up a pretty well-timed wheel route at least once every game to where a running back's flying wide open, and that's where Davis should come in, be able to fill that role that Becks was so good at. Davis should be running back 2, and then and then it's kind of who's going to claim some carries when. Who's going to claim some touches. And I think Ramon Green Jr. is really starting to step into that. Missouri State just rewarded him with a scholarship the other night after walking on the first couple of years. And he was running with the ones a little bit during spring practice, and there's a lot to like about him. I've been watching him for he was a high school kid in this area, and he's probably the best running back I've seen come from the area as long as I've been down here. Just really good patience and just able to hit the hole and read what's going on in front of him. So excited to see hopefully his usage go up, because I've enjoyed him for a long time.
It sounds like maybe there'll be situational running back, short yardage, goal line. It's going to be Lawrence. You need a explosive play, or someone out of the backfield to catch a pass. It's going to be Davis. Would you say that's generally what would you expect in 2025?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of Lawrence, and they're hoping Lawrence can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So they're going to. I think King Davis is really just that home run hitter, good speed that Jaden was. Jaden turned more and more into the guy that got more and more carries throughout the year. So that's a true freshman. He came in, he graduated early, so he's a spring enrollee. Got to watch him a little bit, and he showed he belongs out there. So I'm excited to see him. He's the best recruit. He's the highest rated recruit Missouri State's landed out of high school when you look at the 247 rankings. So that's somebody that a lot of people are going to be watching.
In terms of workload, what do you expect the split to look like? Maybe like 60-20-20 between Green or Lawrence getting the 60 and Davis and Green like maybe getting 20 apiece, or? Yeah,
something like that. Maybe a little bit less towards Green, maybe a little bit more towards Davis. Okay. They're going to want a change of pace, just try to use that speed, and I'm sure they're going to try to build him just some experience, being that just getting some better looks throughout, but trying to get him to be more of a between the tackles type guy. But I think Davis is going to get a good number of carries, but Lawrence is going to be that premier guy.
So I'm assuming the guy that's going to get that first carry against USC is probably Shamori.
Yeah, Shamori. He should be back there unless they're trying to do something to trick somebody. So who knows? It could be Jamari Robinson or something. It could be an receiver coming around or something. But Shamari should be the main attraction for that backfield this year.
The wide receiving room lost two of their top three in terms of receiving yardage as Hunter Wood and Devontae Key graduated. Those two accounted for 130 targets, 88 receptions, and 1,205 yards. But not all is lost. The likes of Jamari Robinson, James Blackstrain, and Dash Luke return. Those three accounted for 45.6% of the targets and 49% of the receiving yards in 2024. How did this group look in the spring?
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I was most interested in this offense. I think the running backs, I trusted what they went and got there. But it's really just you throw a handful of names in there for receiver, and usually it takes a second for someone to break out. Now I'm still waiting to see a slot receiver, really come on, because that's been critical to this offense. The last few years, you mentioned Hunter Wood. His development was a lot of fun to watch throughout his career. Just at some points, you didn't even know if he was a Division I receiver, and then he's able to turn in an All-American caliber season. Raylan Sharp really developed into a great receiver. Was able to transfer to Fresno State. Now back with Bobby Petrino. Who's now Arkansas's offensive coordinator. So that spot's been really productive, and I didn't necessarily see who's going to take that spot over throughout the spring. So that's really what I'm trying to watch right now, is to see who claims that. Now, when you ask the coaches, ask the players throughout the spring, who's going to be Jacob's go-to guy, they said James Blackstrain is somebody that he's really started to connect with. Blackstrain was a 4-star out of high school. He was he was a highly touted guy, ESPN rankings. Didn't get much going at Georgia Tech. He transfers here and he's had a okay first season. I think a lot of people would have liked to see him with kind of that background be able to really break out. But maybe we are seeing, we are able to see him maybe move around, be in that slot a little bit. And there's some guys that sat out throughout the spring as well that would have liked to see in there, whether it's a Dash Luke in the slot. I think he has a lot of potential just being a faster guy. They had Ronell Johnson, recent Stetson transfer in there as well, to where that's Stetson. Ronell just being able to step in there really quickly throughout a spring and be able to look like a starting receiver. So you have guys starting to really try to make their claim in there, but there's a lot to be figured out in that receiver room. And I expect them to also try to address that in the portal as well. Just if they can find their next slot receiver, if they can find some more size, because they've had success with several different types of receivers as well, whether it's those bigger body guys on the outside, being able to flex them around and make them be able to put them in the slot, being able to put them outside. Maybe that's something Blackstrain could do, and that's something that's going to be really important going into the season.
As I mentioned earlier, 130 targets are vacant from 2024. How do you see those targets getting divided up? I know you kind of mentioned about the different sizes of these players, what kind of looking for that slot. So it sounds like maybe that slot guy is kind of that first read. How do you see these getting divided? Yeah,
it's that's the slot, and we're going to have to talk about tight ends coming up as well. But there's a lot. There's a lot to be figured out there. Blackstrain seems to be the leader. Jamarie Robinson has been around for a little bit, so that's and the coaches have been saying that he's had his best spring camp. But everybody's also in the best shape of their lives at that point in the season, as you hear the old coaching cliche. But that's kind of where I'm leaning now is Blackstrain, Jamarie Robinson. And then somebody's going to have to step up a little bit. Somebody's going to, whether it's a transfer they bring in, whether it's a Dash Luke or Ronell Johnson, some of these names that haven't really established themselves yet, there's still a little bit that they need to do.
So moving over to that tight end room, before we actually get to the personnel, how would you describe tight end usage in this offense to someone that maybe hasn't seen it?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. They tried some things the first couple of years with Petrino, when Bobby Petrino was here, and didn't really break out the way they wanted it to, but able to go get Lance Mason, and he's been a starter. He was a starter since his freshman year. He played here for 3 years. So he was just watching him, he's a vertical guy somehow, some way they lost the defenses for whatever reason, would lose track of where he was. And he's just running, streaking down the middle of the field with nobody within 30 yards of him. So they're able to set things up, but good blocker, just a guy that can run, and whether it's the crossing routes, whether it's some of these different ways that you get these tight ends open. And Lance Mason really turned it into a premier spot for Missouri State. And he enters the transfer. He entered the transfer portal this week, looking like he could go to somewhere like Cal or Oklahoma. So that's somebody I thought Missouri State was really lucky to keep on during the after the winter period. I actually just recently asked the head coach about him, and it's just like, hey, how big of a deal is it that you kept Mason? That's almost as big of a deal as the quarterback. And he's like, oh man, we're so lucky to have him. And a week later he's gone. So it's just the life of the portal right now. But tight ends are used all over. They're going to catch passes, they're going to block, and I think just seeing how they're recruiting it and how the level of recruits kind of gone up, it's going to be a pretty attractive vacancy for somebody to step in.
Yeah, when I was putting together the clips for that intro video, I noticed several times how open, to your point, how open he would be down the middle of the field, and like you said, no one was even close to him. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive.
No, you're not going to be that wide open in the SEC. So if he somehow does that, there's some kind of magical power he has. So he's been he's going to be able to show, just his production is going to be able to show the recruits coming in. That the Bears are, they just offered a tight end. I know they've been in contact with some others. You're going to be able to recruit with that. Just like, hey, you get to be the wide open receiver running down the middle of the field this time. It was really impressive what they were able to do with him.
Well, as we were preparing for the show, we thought tight end was kind of locked down with Lance Mason, and as you said, he literally just entered the portal within the last few days. So what are the expectations for this room, moving forward? And did anyone else stand out in the spring?
Gary Clinton is a name that's been around here for a while. He's a local product. He was a pretty good name out of high school as well. He's had a little bit trouble staying healthy for his entire career, but I mean, that's a similar build and similar type prospect that Clinton was when he came in, or that Mason was when he came in. So if you get a healthy year out of Gary Clinton, he's capable of stepping in there and doing some similar things that Lance did. Deron Askin is somebody that I liked out of high school. Just another one of those vertical threats coming out of the tight end, just coming out of being lined up on the line of scrimmage. And then Jackson Cole isn't on campus yet, but that's another one of those another one of the fruits of jumping up to FBS. Just being able to land a recruit like that coming out of the St. Louis area, another one of those kids that's highly, highly ranked among the best Missouri State's ever landed out of high school. So just another one of those prospects that you're really circling, that's a higher level of recruit according to these recruiting sites. But they're going to add more. I noticed an offer today. The Sacramento State kid that's in the portal. I know that they've had contact with one out of Arkansas State that the locals will recognize. So there's they're going to address that a little bit more over the next couple of weeks.
Well, regardless, I guess, of who it is out there at tight end, would you kind of expect the production to kind of take perhaps a little bit of a dip with no Lance Mason?
You can't bet on Mason numbers again. You're going up against better athletes, better competition, and everything at the Group of Five. So I'm just I'm not going to sit here and say Missouri State's going to go have the offensive year it had last year when it's not playing Indiana State this year. It's not playing the Western Illinois that it was a few years back. But I still expect that position to produce, and Nick Petrino's offense to be able to create some numbers for guys like this. They still have the quarterback that's going to be able to deliver some great games. But I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody that this is going to be record 500
yards.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be the record-breaking thing. And then if it turns out to be, then that's the pleasant surprise for everybody. And Missouri State's in a lot better shape making this move than probably a lot of people think.
Well, heading into 2025, Jacob Clark should be very excited to see 4 of his 5 offensive linemen coming back. That spot that's open looks to be a right tackle as Grant Goodson has graduated. This group also looks pretty deep. How is this offensive line shaking out here in the spring?
Offensive line is a question we have every year, and it will be until a meteor hits the earth. Just for Missouri, it's been tough to get that righted since the Petrino Beard era started, but you did see a little bit of improvement as the year went on last year. And so it's going to be the one to watch. They've done it's good to have some continuity there. There are several names that have performed pretty well. I think Hudson Lillibridge and Cash Hudson, just a couple interior guys, have been really good. Christian Loaiza, if he's able to be healthy. Eric Cade's an Ole Miss transfer from a few years back that is just a different body type that Missouri State's not used to having on campus from when you're looking at offensive linemen. So they're bigger. They're, if I ask Ryan Beard, the head coach, about the offensive line, its improved depth and everything and size, he still thinks he's 3 recruiting cycles away from getting that to where it needs to be. It's never been able to, establish a run, just dominate the line of scrimmage. Even at the FCS level, it had struggles with that. So that makes me a little nervous when you go to the FBS ranks when going to get up against those deeper defensive lines. And Clark's able to move around and make stuff happen with his legs to make the pass blocking look a little bit better. But it'll be that's certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on, and really the success of this offense will hinder on how good that group is.
And I mentioned Goodson graduating, so right tackle being open. Are they switching a lot of different people in on this line, or are we keeping a lot of the same guys where they were last year and then just filling the hole there at right tackle?
Yeah, I would assume something like that. I could see Cade being at Eric Cade being at right tackle. Loaiza had that left tackle spot. The Bears played their first game of the season on the road at Montana last year. Montana was ranked top 5 in the country at the time, and the Bears saw 3 starting offensive linemen go down in the game. So that shook some things up. They got better as the year went on, to where they were having to play quite a few different combinations to get that righted. But that was they've got some work to do to make sure that's shored up, make sure they have the right combination, and hopefully have everybody healthy this year.
I'll be interested to see if Eric Cade is actually moving to right tackle, because he played a lot there at left tackle, and just kind of the whole dynamics of that switching from a left tackle to a right tackle, and everything's inverted and all that stuff.
Yeah, Cade was hurt going into week 1 last year. I believe he would have been the starting right tackle, and then Christian Loaiza got hurt during that first game, and then I believe Cade came back and played in left tackle. Came back and played got some snaps there. So I could be wrong there, but there were some combinations they had to do because of some injuries very early on in the year.
If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Yeah, that's if Gary Clinton can stay healthy, that's somebody that, of course, we're watching. Missouri State does a pretty good job with the young backs that they get. I could see King Davis making a name for himself throughout the year, and then just whatever receiver comes on, whether that's James Blackstrain, whether that's a guy that we don't know at the moment. I haven't mentioned Sean Reese yet, somebody that was hurt a lot of last year, another person that could play out of that slot. Dash Luke is probably one that I was most interested in that slot last season. He was just a faster guy. So there's just a few there, but they put up some great numbers last year as an offense, to where it's hard for some of them to break out when they've already made names for themselves. So anxious to see how that goes.
Well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And those not familiar with the Bears defense, can you describe the style and scheme that they run?
Yeah, they run a 4-3. They're going 4 down linemen, and a lot of time they won't have 3 linebackers on the field. A lot of the time, it's just going to those nickel packages, and have had some pretty good slot corners out of the last few years. Linebackers a big question right now. it seems like they're going to be doing a lot more just kind of different things with their safeties. They have a pretty deep safety group. They have a lot of different combinations that they can do to where they are going to be a little flexible and throw a lot of different looks at people with whether it's the size of, they have a safety that's a little bit bigger and can come down and play in the box a little bit. And there's just a lot of versatility with a lot of these guys that pretty excited to see how they do this, because last year was a little rough with some of those things, but they really overhauled the secondary. And it seems like they're going to have some different looks this year that I'm not entirely sure exactly what it's going to look like yet until they get some starting caliber linebackers in there.
Let's start looking at the guys along that defensive line up front. This group sees 14 sacks moving on with Darian Smith and Jalen Williams graduating. The edge rushers will need to be restocked, but guys like Caleb Dietland and Devon Townley Jr. saw about 19 snaps per game, and they're kind of waiting for their opportunity, I assume. They also brought in DJ Wesolak from Oregon State. The interior defensive line looks fairly deep with the return of Giles Tachio, Mitchell Toney, Sterling Smithson, Tim Brantley Jr., and Ryan Williams. How did this unit look overall this spring?
Yeah, there were some injuries during the spring along there. I think they're as deep as I've seen coming off the edge as I've seen since this staff took over, which is what they've been trying to build up towards. Excited to see what Devon Townley Jr. can do. He was a 4-star out of high school, really only had 2 years of high school experience in Minnesota. Ended up playing at Penn State for a year. Didn't see the field, but he's sitting at Penn State, does an okay job with edge rushers, as we've seen from we'll see in the upcoming NFL draft. We've seen with Micah Parsons. So there's reason to be excited about him. Just a big body, more like I've said with a few of these guys since the FBS announcement, since the staff came in, just a different body type than you're used to seeing, just as far as height, arm reach. And, this is a kid where I asked him, he was a really good basketball player in high school, and he could have had his basketball options if he just decided to check his Twitter DMs to where he's sitting in his dorm room one day, flipping through his phone, and then he's like, "Oh, I didn't know I could look at message requests." And then he's flipping through, and there's Todd Golden, the head coach at Florida, just national champion Florida Gators, asking if he'd wanting to talk to him about basketball. And he's just like, "Oh man." And so he's now on this football path. So he's just a different body type there. And you got to be excited about the Oregon State transfer, just in-state guy, DJ Wesolak, coming in, just another high caliber recruits types, just those ceilings that you can get from them. When they've had some good edge rushers over the years, whether that is a Darian Smith. They had a great defensive tackle a few years back that was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, Eric Johnson. So there are some guys there. There's some different types of edge rushers, whether it's the size, whether it's speed when they bring in a Cooper Roy. I think that Caden Weist is in for a breakout. He's a local kid that's just been waiting to get his turn coming off the edge. Just a great build on him, great athleticism, speed, and everything. Just a great ceiling on him. But just a lot of guys that have just some different things to them, but they need to see a little more pass rush numbers. But I'm as confident in that as I've seen in a little bit.
Looking at the interior, where it looks like they have some depth along that defensive line, how do you kind of expect the interior players to kind of shake out?
Yeah, that's one that I wonder about, because they got pushed around a little bit last year. They gave up some rushing numbers. that I'd like to see actually a little bit more depth there, whether it's some of these transfers that they bring in. Mitchell Toney was a really good player that I liked out of high school that's been playing since his freshman year. Tim Brantley Jr. is another one that from that same class that just kind of a similar kid coming in, and I think he's got his best balls ahead of him. And Ryan Williams is a Western Kentucky guy that Ryan Beard went to Western Kentucky and has been successful going to and grabbing those recruits before now they're conference mates. So I think a little more depth there is something I'd like to see. But they've got some good guys that they've been younger, they've been getting experience, and I think they're in pretty good spots to hold that down and then add a couple pieces behind them.
So it sounds like for this room to be successful in 2025, they need some, pass rush and run defense. Who would you say needs to, if you were to pick like one person that needs to step up the most to kind of help this room, who would that be?
Yeah, I'd like to see Devon Townley. I'd like to see him turn into the prospect that he's been touted to be throughout his career. That's somebody that whenever people still get excited about the Penn State name when you land a transfer like that, just those big time program names is going to get people fired up around here for quite a while. So just knowing seeing how he's built, just seeing the size and everything, you see why that he was as well thought of as he was. So if he turns into a dude for them, I think that's going to help out a lot of things with just all across that line.
Well, the linebacking group took a big hit when Taj Chamber decided to transfer to Ole Miss. Dallas Winter Johnson transferred to Tulane, and recently Michael Thiessen entered the portal. A big hit as this team suffered in 2024 in the preseason, an injury to Jared Lloyd. Lloyd had a breakout type season in 2023 with 9 starts, and he was second on the team in tackles with 67. They also bring back Kanye Young and Jashawn Cooper. Is there any word on where Jared is on his recovery process?
Yeah, talking to Ryan Beard, he's been optimistic about it. They kept him out of the spring just because they didn't need to. He got an auto accident before the summer practices this past year. RV just decided to skip a stop sign or a red light and almost killed a couple of those kids. So pretty bad knee injury, was lucky for how bad that ended up looking. So what I've heard is optimistic around him. That's something that you're really hoping for, that improves and that he's good to go. So he's probably still a few months out, but they're being cautious with him at the moment.
So obviously Lloyd missed time there in the spring. How did the linebacking group look as a whole this spring?
Yeah, that's the biggest need, when you might need 3 starters after you read off the names that transferred out, whether it's Taj Chambers, Ole Miss, Dallas Winter Johnson to Tulane. Like, that was the group that you're just like, oh, you feel great with, because Michael Thiessen, you knew, was about to step into the role and be really good at that spot. But he's starting to receive power conference offers, and he's going to get money. So he just, I've loved him since when he was out of high school, and seems like a lot of people are falling for it too now. So really, they have just holes to fill. Kanye Young has been a capable starter. I don't think he's not the fastest sideline to sideline guy, but he can stick his head down and get a tackle. Get a tackle within the box. Sean Cooper is just kind of a relatively unknown right now, but very inexperienced group to where you're really just you're watching the transfer portal right now, and they have made that a big emphasis at the moment to go recruit those type of guys, and they're going to continue to do that until they probably sign 3 or 4 guys. And some of them are going to need to be starter caliber, so they're at least going to have the freedom to pitch playing time to these guys because they desperately need some linebackers.
So similar to Justin's question on the defensive line, who needs to step up to replace the likes of Chamber and Winter Johnson and Thiessen? Maybe that guy's not yet on the team, but if you had to pick somebody right now, who would you say?
Not on the roster. That's probably what I'd say. So I maybe it's Jashawn Cooper just because he's a little younger. Maybe he is somebody we're overlooking right now. But they've done. When you look at what they were able to send out, Dallas Winter Johnson was thought of as a tight end when he was coming out of high school. They make him All-American freshman. Taj Chambers able to go to Ole Miss. Michael Thiessen's going to go to a power conference team. So development at linebacker is another thing they're going to be able to pitch. And you come here, you're good. You're going to be able to go on and make money at a power conference team. So that's I think that I trust that they'll be able to recruit that. It's just a little nerve wracking right now for everybody when you look at it and be like, nope, there's nobody.
Well, moving over to the defensive backfield, that room also takes a hit, losing Lamondre Joe and P.J. Hall to graduation, Kaleno Levine and Avery Powell to the portal. They do return their leader in total snaps from a year ago, and J.J. O'Neal, along with Dylan Simmons and Dylan Dixon. What should we expect from this defensive backfield in 2025?
Yeah, I think some of that might have been by design, getting some of those guys out, and they land at pretty good spots. But whether it's Lamondre Joe, Kaleno Levine, Avery Powell, I think they wanted to get longer, a little more athletic going into the new league, to where Thomas Anderson and Navon Barrett filled that role pretty well. Dylan Dixon looked pretty good as a nickel this past week, and at safety depth is the safety depth is as good as it. It's something that they've been able to pride themselves in over the last few years. J.J. O'Neal has been waiting for his opportunity. He's been a starting caliber player who's just been behind some really good players. And then you just add McGuire Neal in there to where I'm excited to see how they use him because I think he's good enough. He's a player that you want to have on the field quite a bit when Todric and J.J. are worthy of starting in those spots. So I'm pretty confident in this room. I don't know about the depth right now. Behind this group is where I would get a little nervous, and that's where I've seen them trying to recruit a couple corners in the portal. So I like what they have to start out right at the moment, but I would assume they're going to be adding a player or two in the portal in the next few weeks to just try to get that a little deeper.
Is there any one particular player you expect to kind of step up the most, to make this room a success in 2025?
Yeah, that'd be Thomas Anderson, UNLV transfer. That's he's fits what they've wanted, whether it's that taller, longer type of corner that they haven't had over the last couple of years, and that's Ryan Beard was a defensive back at Western Kentucky. He works with them. They had some really good success at corners early on in the Petrino. When Petrino got here, whether that's with Jeremy Webb, who was really good, ended up transferring out to Kansas. Montre Braswell was really good. Floated around some NFL camps for a little bit, XFL, UFL type of guy. So Thomas Anderson's name is the first one that always comes up when you ask coaches about that corner secondary. So I think that's the guy that you need to see success from him if everything's going to come together.
All right, Wyatt, just like the offensive side, if you had to pick a defensive player from the entire unit to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Oh, that's I'm circling Caden Weist at the moment, defensive end. Just if you just saw him out there, he's a physical freak. I know the coaches call him Hercules. So he's built for it. I've seen him have some great success, whether it's whether it's at the high school level. He's a local kid who's been well thought of throughout his career. And that's somebody that I would expect to be able to have maybe be able to work his way into starting caliber type role coming off the edge. He's able to play linebacker if he needs to. Just kind of a freak athlete. So I'm really excited for him and hoping to see some success for him.
We've talked offense, we've talked defense, but how's the special teams unit looking? And is there any concerns replacing All-American punter Grant Burkett?
Yeah, they have a reliable kicker, and that's the first. That's a great thing to have around here. They've nailed that a couple times recently. Grant Burkett's a tough one to replace. I mean, I'm surprised I haven't seen him more on some NFL boards, just because of the numbers he was able to put up, some of what he was able to pin people at some points. And he had to punt a lot early in his career when the Bears weren't that good. So he's plenty of tape out there, but that's going to be a little bit of a concern there. It looks like at the moment they're going with a high school kicker who hasn't punted since high school. I think he kicks off for them, pretty good touchback rate, but he's looks like he's been training with Burkett a lot to try to make him that next punter. Really good soccer player in the area. Just really good with his leg. So we'll see. We'll see if I try to add something in the portal, but I have not seen them address. I haven't even seen them try to do that at all over the last couple recruiting periods. So, if they're comfortable with that'd be Stuart McDonald. If they're comfortable with him, then they haven't given us much of a reason to question what they've done at special teams over the last few years.
Well, now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into the 2025 season?
Yeah, you're always looking at offensive line. That's when you're making this move. That's 1, 2, and 3. When you make that jump, just going up against different caliber, size, and everything of defensive lines. And you maybe flip that for the defensive line as well. How is it going to react to going up against those better offensive lines every single week? And linebackers, until they actually recruit some, will be a question. Or else they'll be inventing a brand new defense to where they don't even have linebackers, and they'll be throwing out defensive backs and trying to play all over the field. So I'm looking at those, and it's building right now. That's what an early FBS tenure should look like. This isn't James Madison jumping in and ready to rule the world right off the bat. I don't think it's a Jacksonville State when Jacksonville State makes its jump for Rich Rod and is able to have the quick success they had. And this is a school that, it looks like an FBS program, but there's a lot of ways that it's not, whether it's facility-wise, whether it's a lot of things behind the scenes, being able to pay a lot of these players to be able to compete with what some of the other schools are paying. There's a lot of work to be done, but you're right in these early years. It's just going to be watching and seeing them try to build into something that can compete.
During the course of this, you kind of talked about addressing some portal needs. Do you view that a lot of these addressing here on O-line, D-line, linebacker will be getting guys through the portal, or is it just rotating the more guys that we have and kind of creating that depth as you build on to what this team can be going forward in the future?
It's a mixture of both. They're gonna when they have those big of holes this late in the period, when you've had, there's 2 really good players that they've lost this past week that they thought they were going to have. So you're going to have to go to the portal and try to plug those in. But they've done a great job at developing at the same time. So I've really liked their mix of whether it's some of these young guys that they've hit on. They've done a good job at identifying some of the younger players. And then we've had some portal success as well. So it's night and day from what it used to be around here. But it's the balance that they have is pretty impressive for what a school like Missouri State's been able to do.
In today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and the transfer portal, how have you seen that change Missouri State's recruiting philosophy?
Football, not as much as you'd think. I haven't noticed. I mean, the portal, of course, you're going to see that. That's how they rebuilt the thing. That's how Bobby came in, revamped this whole roster, built with transfers. Everything was built with transfers. But now that they've had some success, been able to establish some things, they are finding a little bit more of a grassroots, being able to recruit from the high schools and able to develop them into solid players. So that the portal, yes, I mean, they use it. They use the heck out of it, and everybody has to if you want to be able to win. But, I haven't noticed a lot of the money stuff yet. They're going to lose a player like Michael Thiessen to a power conference no matter what. They're going to lose. Maybe they could have been more competitive for a guy like Dallas Winter Johnson this past offseason when he goes to Tulane. But Missouri State, whether it's football, basketball, just not in the zone to be able to compete a lot money wise as far as NIL donors, and we'll see what happens with revenue sharing when that gets approved here in the next couple of months. But there's a lot of work to be done just trying to get that. But haven't noticed much change when it comes to the portal. They still get guys that impress people. There's bigger rosters, and it's not like you could throw a couple million at one guy and think, unless it's a quarterback, and say they're going to change everything like you can with maybe a shooting guard, just the NBA caliber shooting guard at the moment. Your backups aren't making $250,000 like they are in basketball when the rosters are smaller. So I think because the wealth is more spread out at football, you're not going to get those top tier guys, but I don't think there's at this level, I don't think the money is going to be make too big of an impact unless you're Nico over at Tennessee.
How do you feel the staff at Missouri State is doing navigating the portal?
Yeah, just kind of like what I hit on. I think you could tell the plans, and whether it's these holes that they had, just kind of it's saying like linebackers they need to get. The morning the portal opens, it's linebacker offer. They're going to continue to try to get big bodies on the offensive line whenever they can. Just all of their offers, except for one tight end on the offensive side, offensive linemen, just trying to build that depth, build that room into what it needs to look like to get it to the size it needs to be, to have the depth it needs to be able to develop them in future years to where, yes, they have continuity, but if you can upgrade with this move, if you can find a better guy to protect your quarterback, they'll be happy to do that.
What do you think the main strength of this 2025 team is?
Yeah, it's the best player is the quarterback. You've had him in the system for 4 years. He was a backup for one. He was hurt for one. And he was one of the best quarterbacks in FCS last year. So I think just him being there still is just such an advantage when he had options to go elsewhere. That's just having him back there, Jacob Clark, for as good as he's been, that's a strength. That's he's going to put up numbers. He's going to keep them in some games that, normally they wouldn't have been years past. So he's the guy, and Nick Petrino is a really good offensive mind as well. Been really impressed with his play calling throughout his career. Wouldn't be surprised if some bigger school came calling, trying to attract him elsewhere eventually, just because I think that highly of him. So Jacob's going to make this team a little bit relevant, make them a team that Conference USA people are going to want to watch, and going to make them going to give people something to watch when they watch on those Wednesday, Tuesday nights throughout the Conference USA season.
So with the Bears making the move up to FBS and having that probation period. What does success look like for the Bears here in 2025?
This is a team that hasn't won a FBS game since they beat UNLV in 1990. They've been competitive in some. They almost upset a ranked Arkansas a few years back when Bobby was here. They were a few throws away from beating Oklahoma State the year before. So they've been. I mean, they've had some competitive stuff against these FBS programs. Need to finish at least one. When they going in. There are going to be some teams in Conference USA that aren't as good as North Dakota State, South Dakota State were, and that's no insult. That's those are FBS programs that are winning the championships at the FCS level every single year, and they should be an FBS team in the near future. So that's I think they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to knock off a couple of teams, and once league play starts, I don't expect them to give SMU much of a challenge when they come to Springfield. I think that's a little bit of a tall task, but that's. I want to see them show that they belong. I think that's a big step for them, is getting a couple wins, being competitive. Fighting with the likes of Liberty, some of these others, just to show, people can laugh a little bit about Missouri State making the jump when it's not the most successful football program in the world, but just showing it belongs a little bit right now, while also evaluating the roster throughout the year. I think that's as much success as you can have.
How is the tenor or the excitement around there in Springfield about this move up?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a little more football interest than ever. And that's kind of been the case since Bobby got here in 2020. They won some last year. I mean, that's one of their best seasons in decades. They've strung together a few of their best seasons in decades over the last 4 seasons. So it's been 4 or 5 seasons, but no, it's been interesting. There's a lot of growth that needs to happen around this place. This is typically a basketball loving city. It's the high school basketball is great. The high school football is getting a lot better. A lot more investment going into a lot of that too, but it's going to take a little bit of time, and I think getting some exciting things like getting SMU into Springfield is remarkable, and they're going to need I know they're going to be changing some things as far as a game day atmosphere to make sure what should be a sold-out stadium is entertained and wants to come back for when they play Western Kentucky, when they play these schools that they're not used to seeing come in. You're not having the natural rivals, whether it was a Southern Illinois and Illinois State, some of these others, but you're having how's Springfield going to react to a Louisiana Tech coming into town? Is just going to be a little bit different than some of the more regional programs, but it's a different level. I think they'll be excited for ESPN's going to have them on television. They're going to be on the bottom line more often than they ever were on ESPN, and that's good advertising for the school. But I think a lot of people also know a lot of work needs to be done, whether it's facilities-wise around here, trying to revamp the look of that stadium. When there's a whole side of the bleachers that needs to be just kind of redone or reimagined in a huge way. So a lot of money needs to be spent to be able to make this look more like an FBS program. But when you look at the profile of the school and everything, it makes sense why they made the jump. And if you get that invitation, you do it these days because you want that revenue from the networks.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think we should know about this 2025 Missouri State Bears football team?
Yeah, I think people should just be it's gonna, like I said, patience is, especially the fans, patience, and not expecting to go in and rule the world immediately is going to be something. But it's going to be different. There's a lot of growth that needs to happen for a lot of this to look better. And I think they have the leadership in place. They have a new president. They have a new athletic director. And I think they have this going in a more positive direction than the previous administration did, as far as trying to get some fan interest back in everything, listening to people, worrying about trying to get this built up instead of taking credit for themselves. So really excited to see the future of this. Maybe there's a future in which I'm writing that this was a big mistake for Missouri State, but maybe it's the greatest thing the school's ever done. So it'll be a process, but I'm not expecting them to light the world on fire immediately, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
Well, Wyatt, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support, and until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.